a wrap dress from the pattern that I made from the previous dress. As I said in the previous video, that I have been looking into simplifying my pattern without having to actually use my blocks. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it. The pattern that I used on the previous video, I had proceeded into tracing it off on the paper, and then I am going to reduce the seam allowance. I'm going to take out the seam allowance from it because the pattern that I have already, it does have a seam allowance. So I'm going to take out the seam allowance, which will mean me tracing in another 1 centimeter inside of the pattern, and then rubbing the outer part of the pattern, which would then be the seam allowance, you know. So that's what I am doing at this point, because accurate measurements are what is important when you are making clothes. So I'm not skipping any part. I'm taking out all the seam allowance because I love the fit of the dress, but I wanted to make sure that I loosen it up a little bit on the bust area because it was somehow tight, and the arms as well were a bit tight. So I wanted to make sure that it gets a bit comfortable, you know. So instead of me just guessing or just adding a centimeter or 2 centimeter or whatever, I decided that I am going to take a bodice from one of the patterns that I had made, that I had made from the block to the pattern, and the dress that I know that it fits me really well. I'm going to insert it on the pattern that I had already traced in, because I wanted to make sure that I put in the correct measurement, because I love the fit of the dress that of this pattern on the white paper that I had made. So I'm going to trace the extra measurement from this pattern, from the white one to the one that I had already traced it on the pattern. So I have never done this before. I am learning as I go, and I'm so happy to say that I haven't been disappointed so far. So it has been, or the result were actually amazing. I loved what came out of it, and I think I'm going to keep this pattern, and I will recreate a couple of garments from it, because I think it's a workable pattern, you know. It's a workable pattern that I can use over and over again, you know. It's easy fitting, but obviously if I want something that is more fitting, I would have to tailor it. I would have to make a pattern, like insert the dots and so as you can see, I try to put the pattern on the traced pattern and made sure that I excluded the seam allowance on this pattern, because the white pattern already has a seam as well, you know. And I want to say this to the people that watches my videos. This one, guys, I'm just sharing. It's one of the things that I do, so I've decided that I am going to share that with you guys as well. So if you saw me, I measured how many centimeters was out, that was extra from that pattern, and I follow the pattern that I had traced, adding that centimeter. It was about 1.5 centimeter to 2 centimeter, which is quite what I wanted. So I traced it, and then I erased the line that was of the original pattern, because what I did was that I added 2 centimeter with the curves and everything onto the pattern. I did not just do a a straight line. It's important to follow the pattern, the curves and everything. Another thing that I did, because the arms were somewhat tight, I also made a straight line. I added about 1.5 centimeter, or let's just say, just to be safe, 2 centimeter, and I cut it out, and then I put it aside. Then I'm going to start with the back pattern. The one that I had earlier on, it was a front pattern, and this one is the back pattern. And I did the same thing. I took out the seam allowance, erased the seam allowance, and I also added 2 centimeter to the arms as well, to the sleeves as well, so that it can be accommodating to my arms. I have big arms, guys. I have big arms, and I did the same thing with the back pattern, making sure that I add the extra size, the extra centimeters that I got from the back pattern of the white pattern. So what I did not want to do was to add on more volume at the back, so I did not add the entire centimeters to the dress as well. I just added at the top part mostly, because that's where my dress was a bit tight. Like I said before, guys, kindly make sure that if you watch this, if you did not watch the first video, you are definitely not going to understand anything that I am saying. And even if you are not a sewer or a tailor, you're probably not going to understand any of the things that I'm saying as well, you know. So in the patterns that I was doing, that I was redefining, that I was adding more centimeters to it because I wanted it to be comfortable fitting, I did not add any seam, because I'm taking it as my block. I'm treating it as my block, and from it I will make more patterns from it. And if I want to make to create separate sleeves, I'll do so, but in the meantime I'm using that as a block. So I still had to trace my back pattern back on the paper again, and then add the seam allowance to it, which will be my pattern for this dress that I'm making, which is a wrap dress. And after adding the seam allowance, then I'm going to cut it and label it, you know, in a way that it's going to be understandable. I will not forget. It's important to make notes onto your patterns. If anything, use a pencil. You don't have to use like those. You can use a pencil for those ones that are just finer things, and you really don't want to forget them. And I proceeded into tracing the front pattern, and where the neckline started, I added 24 centimeter outwards, and then joined the two lines onto there. And then what I did was I checked my bust area and my chest area on my previous my white pattern for the other dresses, and I used my bust, my top bust, I don't know what to call it, to measure and make sure that I start my wrap there, which like from my bust area. So my dress, you can either wrap it on top of my bust, or I can wrap it at the under my bust. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know, but I measured from my, remember the pattern that I have, it's a lower arm side pattern. Therefore, I had to make sure where my bust, where my chest area is, measure it, and also measure my bust area. This is the bottom of the extended dress, which is the 24 centimeter one, and at the at the end of it, I'm taking out 1 centimeter so that it can have a bit of a shape, you know, have a rounder shape instead of pointy shapes. And then I proceeded into adding a seam allowance to the dress around the hem, the sides, the front, and also the sleeves. One thing that you must not forget, you must cut the facing for the front of your dress. It's important. It looks more clean, it looks more professional when you do that, instead of just folding in your seam. I've seen a lot of people do that. I don't like how it looks, so I always make sure that I cut facing, and I put an iron on it, or a fusing on it, and then I would, you know, sew it in, and it gives that sort of a professional, clean look when you do that. So don't forget to cut your facing, both for your necklines, the front and the back, and then from your wrap, from where your neckline ends to the wrap on the side that goes downwards. I don't know if that makes sense, but if you are as a tailor or a sewer, you're probably understanding what I'm doing. And if you don't mind as well, you can also do for your sleeves. That also looks really, really, really nice. But I was just lazy to do that. It was just too much work. So I just did for the necklines and. So this is the following day, the cutting. I think you can see, you have an idea of how the patterns are. That is the back part. We are going to cut it on fold, and that is the front part of the wraparound. We are going to cut that on in 2 pieces. It is very, very, very important. Don't mind that space that is on the back there. That is okay. I can choose to make a dot there if I feel like it is not fitting the way I want. But since it's a wraparound dress or a flowy dress, it's okay. I don't mind it because I like how it looks on a dress. If it's not, how do I put it? If I make a seam at the back. If you're making a seam at the back, then you're going to add 2 centimeters there at the back. But if you are not, that's still fine. But if you want it more fitting, I think you should cut it and cut it in and make a 2 centimeter seam allowance. But because it's a flowy dress, I'm not going to add 2 centimeters, so I'll just leave it as it is, and it still looked good. I don't have any problems with it, and that's how I cut it. Use weights if you have it. Most people do a little fabric balls with rice. I don't have that. I use what I have on hand. And after I cut that, I also cut the bottom parts, the gathered part. I showed you guys on the previous dress. I'm not going to show you on this one. I proceeded into checking the size of the belt that I want. I always check, you know. Sometimes last time I did 12 centimeter, which gave it 5 centimeter on each side the belt. But this time around I did 14 centimeter for each belt, so that gave me 12 centimeter to fold, which gave me 6 on each side. So I did that on this one. Before I could cut the belt before I could cut the bottom part. Why I do that, I capitalize on the bottom, on the straight bottom part of the fabric that I hadn't touched, so it's easy to measure there and then see what is left, and I cut my bottom part from that. It's really easy. I cut 14 centimeter for each 14 centimeter by 4 meter. I don't know why I did that, guys. I don't know why I did that, but I did do that, and I actually loved how the belt looked. So basically I used like 8 meters of 8 meters. It was 28 centimeter by 8 meters, and that is 12 centimeter by 4 meter. I did that. I don't know, I made a wraparound dress, a wraparound skirt previously, and then the belts were just too short and I didn't like it. That's not how I envisioned it, and it was too late for me to, I don't know. I think I'm going to look for the remaining fabric and add more, because I kind of like how the long ones look. So I did cut my belt in that way. I'm not going to show you how to sew this. I think that one, I'm just showing you guys what I did, how I got to get to that dress. And then as you can see, the facing, you can see I did add fusing on them. The black part is fusing, or what we call iron-on. I always make sure that the pieces are aligned before I take it to the sewing machine, because this was a very fragile fabric and I really didn't want to mess it up. So I really wanted to make sure that I take care of it, and because it got damaged really quick and I didn't want to have to unpick it. So I was making sure that I did everything correctly. Thank you guys for watching. I hope to see you on my next video.